Brock Allen Turner had to write a letter to the judge right before the judge decided to give him a tiny sentence after he was convicted of raping an unconscious girl behind a dumpster. Now, Brock Allen Turner got 6 months in jail for raping someone, but the character letter that he sent to the judge basically did not really take real blame for his actions in doing a rape, in raping a woman. In fact, he seemed to blame everything on the fact that he was drinking alcohol. Let me give you the details from the letter. And I should note, this is not the entire letter. This is the parts of the letter that stood out the most. He says, "I wish I had the ability to go back in time and never pick up a drink that night, let alone interact with the victim. My shell and core of who I am as a person is forever broken from this. I am a changed person. At this point in my life, I never want to have a drop of alcohol again. I never want to attend a social gathering that involves alcohol or any situation where people make decisions based on the substances that they have consumed." So I'm going to stop there and just note that that's the part that every media outlet is circulating right now, because that's the part that stands out the most. It seems as though he does not see himself as someone who is a convicted rapist or a criminal. He sees himself as an innocent individual who just happened to drink too much and as a result of that did what he did. But it's not the alcohol. It's not because the victim got drunk. It's not because of college campus culture or college party culture. It's because you raped someone. And you have to take responsibility for your actions if you genuinely want people to see that you're remorseful.
So there's one other thing in there that bothered me a little bit. He said, he shouldn't have drank that night, as you said, let alone interact with the victim. Now, you could take that in a positive light and say, I wish I hadn't done anything against her, although interact is kind of a funny word. You could also take it in a negative light and go that it's almost victim blaming. Yeah. Like, if I hadn't just run into her, everything would have been fine. If I'm the judge, I look at this in its totality and go, boy, this kid still doesn't get it. You know, yeah, he says, oh no, I'm really hurt, and it's hurt the core of who I am, and I can't drink anymore. I'm not sure you're getting the severity of what you did to the other person.
There's a lot of, mention of what he's feeling and what he's going through, and there's very little mention of what the actual victim is going through. Now, I'm going to read you the part where I think he sounds the absolute most remorseful throughout the entire letter, and this is the only part where I feel like he sounds completely remorseful. He says, "I'm the sole proprietor of what happened on the night that these people's lives were changed forever. I would give anything to change what happened that night. I can never forgive myself for imposing trauma and pain on the victim. It debilitates me to think that my actions have caused her emotional and physical stress that is completely unwarranted and unfair." So that was probably the best part of his entire letter. But his letter is long, and the rest of it basically talks about how terrible he feels that,
about what's happened to him.
What's happened to him, exactly.
Right. So that part of the letter is great. I wish he'd only written that part of the letter. Now, read the rest, and there's one part that drives me absolutely nuts.
This part drives me nuts as well. He says, "I've lost 2 jobs solely based on the reporting of my case. I wish I was never good at swimming or had the opportunity to attend Stanford, so maybe these newspapers wouldn't want to write stories about me."
No, that's it right there. No, Brock, you're not getting it. You're not unlucky because you're going to Stanford, and that's why they're writing about you, and otherwise you would have gotten a very light sentence anyway, and no one would have bothered you for raping someone. No, you're super lucky for going to Stanford and having all these privileges. You know that other people in your situation, I was almost going to say a kid, but if someone in the inner city who's 20 years old rapes a woman behind a dumpster, they're not called a kid, and they suffer tremendous, significant consequences. It doesn't have to be inner city, too. It could be poor or middle class anywhere in the country. They'd be one guy that was an actual kid, 16-year-old that we reported about, was wrongly accused. He was facing 41 years. He served over 5 years when he didn't even do it. Now we find out that this kid's going to get released in the beginning of September. He's only going to serve 3 months because of good behavior, etc. No, you have all of the privilege in the world. Because you went to Stanford and you're good at swimming, you're going to get a slap on the wrist for rape. but he still thinks I'm the victim.
I know, it's
Oh my
incredible.
God, the media has treated me unfairly for pointing out that I've been convicted of rape. And if it wasn't for them, I would have gotten a super light sentence because what? It's not that big a deal. And they wouldn't have shamed me.
Look, he doesn't get it, but part of the reason why he doesn't get it is because it seems like he is considered infallible by his family members and the people around him, right? So his friends wrote character letters for him, and this basically happens before the judge sentences you. So it's supposed to influence the judge's sentencing, to see who you are as a person. That way the sentence makes sense. It fits the crime and it fits whether or not this person is a threat to society. And you read these character letters, and they're ridiculous. They make excuse after excuse for his behavior. So, first of all, one of his friends, Leslie Rasmussen, says, rape on campus isn't always because people are rapists.
What?
Yeah. Rape on campus isn't always because people are rapists. If someone rapes, they are, by definition, a rapist.
But you know, what's the most sickening part of that is that defense basically worked. This isn't real rape. Real rape is done by poor people that are scary and the other, and you don't want to meet them in a dark alley. By the way, he raped her in a dark alley behind a dumpster. Okay, so but they're not this good, upstanding citizen who's going to Stanford and comes from a wealthy family, and he does it on campus. Well, then he's not really a rapist. And the judge was like, well, good point. I'll only give him 6 months. In reality, I know that's actually 3 months because prison would be tough on him.
It would have a severe impact on him. Those were the judge's words.
But see, the judge can't see straight. And look, I don't want to turn this into a thing where if every judge isn't super tough on people, we're going to get rid of them and etc. I just want the same justice for everybody. I wish that judge would realize that prison is going to be tough on everyone he sends to prison. You think it's not going to be tough on a minority kid? You think it's not going to be tough on a poor kid just because they're poor? No, but for the rich kid, you go, there, but for the grace of God goes my son. Ooh, this is going to severely impact him.
In fact,
you're a judge. Everyone you send to prison is severely impacted.
Look, and if you think that Cenk is overreacting, let me give you a statement by the judge after he read the letter by Brock Allen. This is graphic 6. I take him at his word that subjectively, that's his version of his events. I'm not convinced that his lack of complete acquiescence to the verdict should count against him.
Now, in other cases, if you don't immediately admit guilt, they throw the book at you. You showed no remorse. You've learned nothing from this. You are clearly a threat to society. Maximum sentence. In this case, well, he doesn't quite get it, and he doesn't really admit it. But is he really a rapist? It happened on campus, right? And I don't want to have a severe impact on the poor kid.
It's just, I mean, there is a two-tier justice system, and anyone who denies it is either naive or in denial. This is what the reality of America is. If you have certain privileges, if you're from a certain socioeconomic status, if you have a certain skin color, the odds are in your favor. And again, like we talk about white privilege, it's not all white people's fault that this is happening, right? That white privilege exists. You're not necessarily guilty of what this system is doing. It just means that because of stereotypes, because of certain biases that exist, certain people get a benefit of the doubt that other people don't get.
Just be aware of that and show the same level of empathy to others as you might show to this guy. I think he was shown way too much empathy in this case, but what drives me crazy is when we show no empathy to the others and we crush their lives without a second thought.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the people who have that privilege, in this case, Brock Allen Turner is a very good example of it, then pour salt on everyone else's wounds by pretending that they're the victim.